Hello, BookTube. I went out and about today. It was a bright sunny day earlier in the day, and it's very temperate. It's short sleeve weather, and I'm feeling recovered. And I have a lot to do. It's amazing that when you at least for me, when I stopped doing things, things piled up, especially outgoing mail. Oh my god! So I went out earlier today, uh, and my errands brought me to a bookstore. And I know that I've already sort of conditioned all of you to think that when I have a video that starts with "I went out," you're going to get a subway story. But I'm actually, those of you who know subways, a lot of you maybe don't have access to subways, don't ever ride them on a regular basis. I've ridden Boston subways as long as there have been Boston subways, and those of you who ride subways in New York or anywhere else will agree with me, I think, when I say to the rest of you that the whole point is not to have a story. The whole point is for nothing to happen. You get on the subway and you sink into the woodwork and you do a chameleon thing so that no one can see you against the tattered posters for free medical care. That's the whole point. You don't want anything to happen because crazy people use the subway. And I didn't have a subway story today, but I do have a story of being out and about because yesterday, as what I view as the cosmos kind of tacitly rewarding me for surviving my horrible illness, I got a little checky poo in the mail. It was a freelance piece from a long time ago. It happens if you're a regular freelance writer. This will happen to you. If you're lucky enough to have lots of venues, it'll certainly happen to you. I had completely forgotten about it. Of course, I don't. I am not an agonizing writer. I'm not over every word. So I just wrote something. I had a blast and sent it off, and I got a checky poo for it today. And because it wasn't in any way in my planning, I thought, well, this should be what me sainted ma would have heard as mad money. You should just spend this instead of plowing into anything or paying a bill with it or anything like this. And I had that idea in mind, and then my errands took me near a bookstore, a big, bright, shiny retail bookstore, Barnes and Noble, here in Boston. The second Barnes and Noble in Boston, where I worked. I worked at the big, rambling, falling apart at the seams old Barnes and Noble in downtown Crossing for a very, very long time. Deb and I worked in that store for a very long time, having so much fun with the customers, having so much fun with the staff. The poor staff who didn't know what to do. They knew they liked her more than me, but they didn't know what to do with either one of us. And then when that store closed, the company very generously, I think, moved us all over to the other Barnes and Noble in Boston. They could have just cut us all loose. Instead, they added us to the payroll of that other store, and it wasn't the same experience, but it was still a Barnes and Noble. I still got customers. I still got to know the staff, and then I left after I've told this story on this channel before. After a while, I would be standing there, in a store that had no customers, and I'd be thinking, every minute that I stand here, I'm actually losing money. It's not even that I'm bored. It's that this is costing me money that I could be earning on my couch with my dogs. It didn't take long thinking that, at least in my terms of long, it didn't take long thinking that for me to, just decide that 25 years is enough. So I left. But I went back today. My errands took me near enough so that I could go into that store, and also the timing was perfect because it was at the end of my errands, so I wasn't lugging 70 pounds of anything. I was just footloose and fancy free. So I went in there with money in my pocket to just shop. And I wanted to show you what I got. Now, one of the things that I get in retail bookstores, I don't, as you can tell, obviously, so if you watch this channel, you see I get 10 books a day in the mail, so I don't need to buy new books. I certainly don't need to do what I once did. Once upon a time, I was in exactly your position. I would imagine most of you, where I would know about some new release or maybe many new releases. I'd go into a new bookstore, and you can't buy any of them, or maybe one of them with some budgeting. But you can't just go in and buy whatever you want because books are too expensive. I remember the heartache of that very much. But I don't have to worry about that anymore because I'm now a full-time reviewer. So there are only a small category of things that I would get at a bookstore a retail bookstore, and that is specifically the stuff that I am not sent. And I am constantly trying to increase the number and the amount of things that I am sent. But typically, mass market paperbacks, I don't get sent. And typically, graphic novels, I don't get sent. I don't know why that is. I'm sure it's just a question of that I haven't found the right person, the right contact. I'm sure that it is. But one way or another, I don't mind. So I got 3 romances today. 3 beautiful, colorful mass market romances that will be my, palate cleansing off moment reading for the rest of the year. I want to show them to you. The first one is by Julie Ann Long, and it's called Angel in a Devil's Arms. It's a Palace of Rogues novel, and I don't know if it's the first. Oh no, this is the 4th one. This is the 4th Palace of Rogues novel. I'm looking at the covers on the inside cover here, and I think I might have read number 2, The Legend of Lion Redmond. But anyway, this is the cover. I don't know what's going on in that cover. I honestly don't. I would be making different decisions if I were her. I think. But what have we got here? You look at the cover while I read it. He has devil's blood in his veins. At least that's always been the legend. How else could the Duke of Brexford's notorious bastard son return from the dead? The brutal decades since Lucian Durin, Lord Bolt, that's his name, Lord Bolt, allegedly drowned in the Thames, forged him into a man who always gets what and who he wants. And what he wants is vengeance for his stolen birthright, and one wild night in Angelique Breedlove's bed. Her name is Breedlove. Bolt and Breedlove. Okay. All right. Well, it was a cover by. So Angelique recognizes heartbreak when the enigmatic Lord Bolt walks into the Grand Palace on the Thames, and not even his devastating charm can tempt her to risk her own heart ever again. One scorching kiss drives home the danger. And I'm thinking that they're going to relent. They're both going to give in. Now, that was the salacious one. The other 2 of these novels are fully clothed. And they are far more. The middle one is far more of a customary Regency novel. It looks like one. It won't be. These big, elaborate, obviously, the cover from this one gives it away, but these big, elaborate Regency romances, I mean, a lot of times they don't even give the year in which this is set. They don't even call themselves Regencies anymore. I'd be willing to bet that will be the case here. Let's see. Yeah, no date at all on when this takes place. Just some sort of nebulous Regency-esque English past, candles, horse-drawn carriages, ballrooms, that sort of thing. A far cry from the signature Regency romances that I love so much, the older kind of Regency romance, where the specific historical details are front and center. You get the date at the beginning of the book. You know around when in the Regency era the book is going to take place. In the Regency era novel that I just finished, The Waltzing Widow, Napoleon Bonaparte has escaped and is making war on the continent again, and that directly influences the action, because when he is in exile, the high society of London decides to decamp to Brussels for the season. Now they can finally travel on the continent again. And the main character has a daughter who is coming out to society. She is a debutante. So the mother decides, well, since there won't be anybody in London, we'll go to Brussels. And since all the glittering world is there, you can have your coming out there. And so they're in Brussels when Napoleon is marching on the city, when he's a couple of days away, and it affects everybody. Nothing like that happens in modern Regency romances. Most of them, modern Regency romances, most of them don't. Nothing like that. There is no historical accountability whatsoever. And by the same token, another one of the staples of those older kinds of Regency romances, which is one of the reasons that I like them so much, is that there's a great deal more discipline and craft involved in them than in some of the later pastiches, no matter how funny they are. A lot of them are very fun, lots of fun to read. I wouldn't trade them for anything. But another one of the big staples of those earlier kinds is that there's no sex in the novel. There's plenty of sexual tension, and plenty of flirting, and maybe even some hints at darker stuff from the brutish male characters. But as with Jane Austen and the lesser lights of her day, all of the actual consummation is left for your imagination when the book is over. That is not true. Even in the ones in the two that I'm going to show you that are more discreet on the cover, that is not true. You will get hanky panky right away. This next one is by Ella Quinn. It is part of the Marriage Game series, and it's called The Seduction of Lady Phoebe. And there you see a far more traditional Regency romance cover, but I'd be willing to bet that those two are scorching the sheets within 30 pages. Let's see here. Phoebe Stanhope is not a typical lady. As feisty as she is quick-witted, no one can catch her, especially when she is driving her dashing phaeton with its perfectly matched horses. And unlike her peers, experience has guarded her against a growing list of would-be suitors. But when she encounters Marcus Finley, what she fears most burns deep within his deep blue eyes. For Lord Marcus, the spark of recognition is but a moment in the love he has held these many years. Now that he's returned to England, all the happiness he desires rests on Lady Phoebe never finding out that he was the one who turned her heart so cold and distant. So the reason that she's so cynical about men is him. And he's got to hide that fact from her if he has any chance, because he's in love with her. Oh my God. He must work fast to gain the advantage, to convince her that what she wants is actually what she denies. But in order to seduce her into his arms, he must be willing to give up more than he can control. Okay, well, and Ella Quinn, I know. Ella Quinn wrote. These covers. The inside cover shows you previous books by that author. A very good thing, since a lot of these romance novels. I'm sure I'm not the only reader of these romance novels who is keyed to them by the visuals of the cover, not really the title. And it started with a kiss. There's, I think I've read a couple of these. The Marquis and I've read. The Marquis and I. But Ella Quinn's book, it started with a kiss. That one I remember, and that one I remember liking very much. I don't know if this. I think that's in a different series. This is the Marriage Game series, but I'm pretty sure that was a different series. Yes, the Worthingtons. That was in a different series, but still, I already know that I kind of sort of like this author. So, and then this next one, the last one here, it's a little longer than the other two, and it's an author that I don't really know that well, and it's an attempt on my part to branch out. There's Regency romances. There's shape changers. Oh my God, don't get me started on shape changers. There's intrigue. Some guy with a gun on the cover. There's Vikings, not so much anymore. American Indians, not at all anymore. Not at all. And another staple of the romance genre is Highlanders. I have no idea why. I think a lot of it might have to do with the kilt. But one way or another, Highlanders has been durable, and it's never really done it for me. And I think one of the reasons, I've always thought that one of the reasons why it never does it for me is because I know too much about the region, Highlanders in general, and also the time period when these would have been the most disgusting men that you could get intimate with, not the most attractive ones. But then again, maybe that's not the reason, because I know a lot more about Regency era London, and I'm perfectly willing to suspend that. One way or another, I'm trying to learn. I've learned already to like contemporary romances. I'm learning to like cowboy romances. I'm learning to like all of these things, and I'm going to keep getting Highlander books and learning to like them. And so I got this one. This is by Vanessa Kelly, and it is The Highlander's Christmas Bride. This is a Clan Kendrick novel. Rather pretty thing. There's the kilt. See what I mean? There's a fairly anachronistic Christmas tree there and a roaring fire. What have we got here? Being thrown over by the man she expected to marry was humiliating enough. Now that Donella Haddon, grandniece of the Earl of Riddick, has also proven a failure as a nun. See what I mean? You don't get twists like that in the old Regency romances. Anyway, she has no choice but to return to her family's estate. The brawny Highlander sent to escort her is brash, handsome, and the only thing standing between Donella and a gang of would-be kidnappers. But the scandal in her past can't be so easily outrun. Wealthy widower Logan Kendrick was expecting to meet a plain, pious spinster, not a gorgeous, sharp-tongued lass who could hold her own in any ambush. Though she's known as the flower of Clan Graham, Donella is no shrinking violet. In fact, she might be the perfect woman to bring happiness back to his lonely little son's life. Oh, he's a single father. She's a failed nun, and he's a single father. just in time for Christmas. But first, you must protect her from an ugly gossip and a mysterious threat, and convince her that their wild, unexpected desire is heaven sent. Now let's look and see if I know any of these. Do I know Vanessa Kelly, the Highlander who protected me? I read that. Oh, I've read a couple of her Highlander books. Okay, all right. Yeah, the Highlander's Princess Bride and the Highlander Who Protected Me. I don't know if those are. Oh no, okay. The Highlander Who Protected Me was the first in the Clan Kendrick series, and I did read that. So now I've got the Highlander's Christmas Bride. All right, great. So I got three very colorful, sure to be enjoyable mass market romances. And keep in mind, I get a discount at Barnes & Noble, or even this would have been prohibitively expensive. But then another reason that I go to Barnes & Noble is periodicals. There are no more newsstands in Boston. There's only one in Cambridge across the river, and I wouldn't go there just for that. And Barnes & Noble has an enormous periodical section. So they are literally the only game in town anymore. And I go there for periodicals that I don't subscribe to. And two of the periodicals I love most in the world that I don't subscribe to are science fiction, square-bound science fiction journals, Asimov's and Analog. And I got both of those today. I got the new Asimov's. Look at that, huh? And the new Analog. Two very nice, attractive covers. I go through these things like candy. There are collections of short stories. There are also columns for reviews. There are some nonfiction pieces in some of them, and I just I eat them up. I will often branch out and get science fiction and fact, or science fiction and fantasy, or something like that. But these two are staples. And the only reason that I don't subscribe to them, I'd be happy to subscribe to them. The only reason that I don't is because there never seems to be any subscription cards in them. I should really scour this thing for, just to subscribe to. There must be some sort of information in here, or maybe I could do it online. They always have something like this. See, where you subscribe, you pay an amount for a collection kit of back issues. I have all these back issues. I want to know how to subscribe, in the future. But anyway, this is at least 2 hours, guaranteed 2 hours of fantastic reading. As I've said about Asimov's and Analog on this channel before, they're science fiction short story collections, so, they'll be uneven. That's the nature of the beast. But at least once in every single issue of both of these, there is a short story that will make your hair stand on end. A short story that is just incredibly good. And I don't know, a lot of you, I have a long history with science fiction. And like a lot of people who have a very long history with science fiction, most of that history's beginning was in the form of enjoying short stories, especially short stories that make your hair stand up, that are that good. Well, those electrically fantastic short stories are still being written. And they are here, and they are in other places too. But these are the two venues that I love. And I love that feeling, too, to encounter a short story like that and suddenly be dunked into an entire world. Oh, I get that regularly. It is not a gamble. There is no such thing as a complete dud of an issue of either Analog or Asimov's. And then the last thing that I got at the bookstore today was also something that I don't get in the mail, and that's graphic novels. I mentioned comic books and graphic novels. I almost never do. Every once in a while at DC or Marvel, I will find a contact person. And I will, have a professional conversation with them. I won't gush as a fan. Instead, I'll say, I notice that you have a $125 book coming down the pike. It's a hardcover of reprints from 70 years ago. It's going to be a tough sell for anyone outside of specialty shops, and I think you might want to. I would assume that you would want to raise the consciousness of this thing outside of specialty shops. I have a dedicated readership on 3 different continents, and I also have a dedicated following on BookTube. I am a professional reviewer. I can show you, better than a decade's worth of clips in a string file. I'm offering to do that. If you send me a copy of this thing, I guarantee you I will write about it. You're out postage. You have copies. You're only out the postage. Every once in a while, I will find a publicist, more at DC than at Marvel, who's willing to say, yeah, of course, I'll do that. But then they go. The publicist overturn in comic books is even more brutal than it is in the normal publishing world. So then it's gone. And then I have no one else to contact. So it never happens regularly. As a result, I tend to get my graphic novels at the comic shop for full price. And I haven't done a Comics Wednesday in so long on this channel. There hasn't been anything to interest me. So I went to the comics section of the bookstore today, just thinking, if there's anything, bookstores get comic collections far later than specialty comic book stores do. But I thought maybe there's something that I was hoping would come to my comic shop that didn't, and that is now finally at a comic store, the bookstore. So I can just buy that, and I did find such a thing. Marvel Comics has a collection of reprints, or a line of reprints called the Epic Collections, ranging over the whole of their back catalog, in solidly done paperback volumes of full color. They're a bit pricey. They're a bit on the expensive side, but they are worth it. If it's a good run, they are worth it. And I have quite a few of them. I have quite a few Epic Collections. I got another one today. And this was, if I remember correctly, I mentioned this before on a Comic Book Wednesday, probably half a year ago, when I said that this was one of the things that an online website said would be at the comic shop the next day. And then when I went, they didn't order one. So it wasn't there. But it did come out. So I found this. This is an Epic Collection, Marvel 2-in-1, Volume 1. And this was a very successful, ran for a long time, about 10 years, team up book. Marvel, once upon a time, about 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, did 2 team up books every month, starring their 2 famous everyman characters, Spider-Man and the Thing from the Fantastic Four. And the reason why it was important to do that is because you couldn't really do a monthly team up book with someone who wasn't an everyman character. It wouldn't really work, right? You could do occasional team ups like that, but it wouldn't make any sense for Doctor Strange or Reed Richards to be having team ups every single month, and it also wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. The fact that the allure of having a regular new guest star every month in a team up comic book is, in addition to the action and in addition to seeing what these people are like together, these characters are like together, the allure is what an everyman will think of this weird new person, right? And if the main character is weird themselves, that won't work. The everyman character, whether it's Peter Parker or Ben Grimm, is our stand-in in these great old iterations of these team-up books, and I love them. I bought the Spider-Man's was Marvel team-up, and the Things was Marvel 2-in-1, and I bought them on and on. I mean, they were ensemble things that they never had a very regular creative team. When they did, they were great, but they didn't often have that. So you never knew what you were going to get in terms of writing or artist or whatever. But you always knew that it was going to be fun and energetic, and almost always, something you definitely don't get today, almost always the writers were working from the Marvel bullpen system, which was not an actual bullpen, but it was a kind of collective visualization of these characters so that no one would be out of character. If somebody showed up in Marvel 2-in-1, they wouldn't be different from the version of themselves that so you would get what you were expecting. And the cover is John Romita Sr. That is the Thing versus the Hulk, and that's how this whole thing started off. This whole thing started off with Marvel Feature, a story from 1973 called Cry Monster, that took off. That was Marvel featured a couple of adventures of the Thing teaming up with other people, and that was successful enough so that then Marvel 2-in-1 launched. And the first issue of Marvel 2-in-1 was awful. It was awful. It'll be in here. I can show you a glimpse of it. It had the most. I'm a big fan of Gil Kane, the artist Gil Kane, but this is the most cramped Gil Kane artwork imaginable. It's very well done, very well remastered on the page, but and also it features a team up between Ben Grimm, the Thing, and Man-Thing, Marvel's answer to Swamp Thing, a swamp creature. And it has the dumbest storyline in the world, where the Thing is reading a newspaper and sees mention of a monster called Swamp Thing, and is so mad that this monster is horning in on his code name that he flies out to try and find this creature and have it out. But by only issue 4, let me get to this. By only issue 4, Marvel 2-in-1 was already fielding a masterpiece, something that I have praised on this channel before. And you want a masterpiece in the 1980s, late 1970s, early 1980s, you get Steve Gerber. And they did. And Marvel 2-in-1 number 4 is The Thing and Captain America. There's another beautiful Gil Kane cover, in which The Thing and Captain America travel to the future, which is largely undiscovered country for Marvel Comics. The Marvel Comics really doesn't have much of a future. In the way that I mean, you know what I mean. It's all very much set in the present, where or most of it is, with only a few exceptions. And that the Marvel Team 2-in-1 number 4 and number 5 are a 2-part storyline that is just terrific, just terrific. And then there's also this one also has Marvel 2-in-1 number 9, in which here, let me get you the cover. The cover is just a work of art, so beautiful. Another Gil Kane masterpiece, in which the Puppet Master, a Fantastic Four villain, mind controls Thor. Look at that cover. That is just so beautiful. Mind control. The inside artwork is by Herb Trimpe, so it's not the so beautiful part goes away pretty quick. But the mind controlled Thor, of course, the Puppet Master gives Thor one command, which is fly to the Baxter Building, the home of the headquarters of the Fantastic Four, and destroy them. And Thor does, and he bursts through the wall and dispenses with the Fantastic Four in no time at all. The Human Torch, Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Girl. It's only the Thing who arrives on the scene at the last minute that stops everybody from dying. The Thing fights Thor physically, mano a mano, and says during the issue that something must be wrong with Thor, because if something weren't wrong, this is the flippin' God of Thunder. He would beat me easily. And I loved the issue when it came out. Absolutely loved it. And yet it got me thinking that, of course, that isn't the case. That wouldn't happen. If even catching the Fantastic Four by surprise, Thor would still easily be defeated. Almost anybody would be. If you have a non-comic book utilization of Fantastic Four's powers. For instance, the Invisible Girl could create a brick-sized force field in Thor's throat. Inside his throat. He has to breathe. Suddenly he's completely incapacitated. She can turn his hands invisible. Suddenly he's completely incapacitated. And there's also Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, who is one of the only Marvel Comics characters who cannot use his powers. Because he's a superhero. Because he means to do the right thing. So he's reduced to making flares and warning people and making flame barriers and whatnot. When if an enraged God of Thunder broke into the Baxter Building and looked like he was going to kill Johnny Storm's sister and brother-in-law, well, then Johnny Storm would make a tightly controlled beam of plasma and fire it straight at Thor's face. It would burn his face off. Thor's not invulnerable. He's extremely tough, but anything that will melt metal will melt his skin. And Johnny Storm could do that to anybody. Like, for instance, there was one issue, different comic months and months ago, years ago probably, where there's a brief off-camera fight between him and Sabretooth, the big burly Wolverine villain, whose superpower is that he's savage and that he has an accelerated healing factor. So if you shoot him or burn him, he recovers almost instantaneously. And Johnny Storm knows that about Sabretooth. He knows that he has an accelerated healing pattern and that no damage is going to be permanent except for fatal damage. So Johnny Storm's facing Sabretooth in combat and the stakes are extremely high. What does he do? Burn half his body away to ash. Sabretooth also is not invulnerable. You're the Human Torch. Hit him with a river of concentrated, superheated plasma. No Sabretooth for probably a month. Certainly not in that fight. So, you Marvel 2-in-1, these team-up books, you start to think things like that. You start to think, well, how would this go? If the Thing is teaming up with Daredevil, is there really anything that Daredevil could contribute to that Thing couldn't do on his own? Daredevil is a human in leotards, and the Thing can lift 85 tons. So, stuff like that, I am sure that I'm going to love rereading the issues in here that I'm not all that familiar with. I know the two-parter with Captain America. I know that backwards and forwards. The second part of it stars the Guardians of the Galaxy, not the Marvel Comics movie superstars, but rather the original version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I know that one word for word. it's going to be a joy to read it again anyway. I know the Thor issue word for word. And there's also an issue early on, I think it's issue number 3, also drawn by Gil Kane. Gil Kane is one of my favorite comic book artists, and he did an early issue of Marvel 2-in-1 after the Man-Thing debacle. There was an issue with Thing teams up with Submariner, Prince Namor the Submariner. That's always fun to watch Gil Kane draw a character like that. So I'm sure that I'm going to enjoy rereading these things anyway. And it was discounted, and it's a comic book to talk to you about on Comic Book Day. I wasn't even lightly tempted to go to the comic shop today for anything that I saw in the electronic list ahead of time online. That won't be true next week. You should prepare yourself ahead of time for griping, but it won't be true next week, because next week is Legion of Superheroes #1. Not Millennium, not some introductory issue, but the actual first issue of Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. So I'll be getting that. But anyway, that was my trip to the bookstore. Always fun to do. Don't do it all the time, but for an indulgence with a checky poo in my pocket, it was a lot of fun. So we have Marvel 2-in-1, Cry Monster. This is an epic collection of the first 20 issues of Marvel 2-in-1. Then we have Analog and Asimov. So much fun. These are really all diversions. This part of the fun of going to a bookstore is to get diversions. I get my real reading in the mail. Then a bunch of romances. We have The Highlander's Christmas Bride, perfect Christmas reading. We have The Seduction of Lady Phoebe by Ella Quinn. And we have The Angel in a Devil's Arms, where I don't know what he would be saying. What is he saying on that cover? What on earth are you doing talking to those weird BookTube people? Is that what he's saying? So there you go. Nice, colorful, fun bookstore outing. Oh God, look at how long this video's gone. Oh, sorry about that. I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.